Never want to forget because I have. Ooh.
Right,
And then we had to re-record like the intro, just a couple minutes, but it's that's a terrible
right.
feeling. So I just want to say thank you. I would say feel free to go a little rogue. Feel free to poke at me, get me to laugh a little bit because I feel that
Okay.
that's the kind of energy we can have. Well, I know I kind of have a smooth style and I naturally segue from one topic to the other. You can kind of throw a hand grenade at me and see how I respond. I'm okay with that.
Okay, good.
If it makes
All right.
sense, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So thank you for being a guest. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to get started and just thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, I am Deb Coviello, founder of the Drop In CEO brand, and I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of this amazing podcast. And I have the good fortune of being introduced and speaking to amazing leaders, and they share their insights, their career journey, and hopefully inspire you along the way. And if you love this episode, I know you will, I would ask that you subscribe, rate, review, continue to tell others so we can continue to bring great programming. And just know, I am this helper of the C suite leader of today and tomorrow navigate their challenges with confidence. And so today I am grateful to have met this amazing guest, Hersh Rephun. With dual chops in comedy and advertising, Hersh has enjoyed an eclectic career spanning 2 decades as a writer, brand storyteller, and get this, as a stand up comedian playing gigs across the country. Often he uses humor to humanize brands. Empathy and accessibility are the hallmarks of his work. And above all, as a brand storyteller, Hersh operates on one simple principle: sell the truth. His clients include change makers, market leaders, agencies, and Oscar winning filmmakers. He is also, and I am so pleased to say, host of the Yes Brand and Trust Tastes Funny podcast. He has toured the country performing in venues such as the Comedy Store, Stand Up New York, Comic Strip Live, Funny Bone, and the Ice House. And most importantly, he has guided clients and colleagues in a host of social action campaigns. And in 2021, he and Isaac Vadlin formally launched Kosher, a streetwear brand committed to goodwill, inclusion, and equity. Such an accomplished person. Hersh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deb. It's a pleasure to be here. Really, really an honor to be here.
So we are going to have a lot of fun on this. I was introduced to Hersh by the network. Shout out to Frank Agan, who found value in introducing us. I also had the good fortune of being interviewed on his podcast, Yes Brand. It was a lot of fun. I had the pleasure of bringing forward his insights to you. Um, this is an important one because he's different and I love different. You know, I always go against the grain, but he has a significant background in helping companies and individuals find their brands messaging and also leveraging humor. And we need to laugh a little bit more in business. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Her, share a bit about yourself personally and the work that you're doing now.
Thanks, Deb. I have to begin with the word play. It's something I kind of I discovered recently, which was I was going through all the different aspects of what I do, and we're always trying to refine our own messages, no matter how much we help others with their messaging. Sometimes our own takes a little extra sweat. Um, but the thing that I realized was a through line through everything that I've done, even things like the nonprofit that we created with the kosher brand. We created a complete nonprofit offshoot of the streetwear brand, so called the Keep It Kosher Project. But everything has a through line of play, of fun, and I think maybe even that's why my first podcast is called Truth Tastes Funny, because uh, we get a chance to play with guests, even though we're talking about really serious issues quite often. Um, Yes Brand has its roots in an improvisational comedy rule called Yes and then um, and I just noticed that play is the one thing I can't seem to do without. So I appreciate your being game, for example, and coming on the Yes Brand podcast. We don't know exactly what will happen or what we'll find funny or serious, and so that as a child set the tone for um, for my life, really. When I was a little kid, I was, a little comedian, like a lot of kids are funny. Um, but I had an ear for voices. I had an ear for dialects and mimicry. So if I saw a person on the street, or I saw a person performing, or relatives, whoever it might be, I was able to mimic their gestures, their body language, their voice, their attitude. And you might think, oh, well, someone like that would become an impressionist. And yet I couldn't figure it out, but I always knew I wasn't going to be an impressionist. I did do stand-up comedy and I started performing, but I also somehow got into advertising. I went to School of Visual Arts in New York. I studied filmmaking, screenwriting, and also by accident, because the chairman suggested it, advertising. And I ended up really becoming like the go-to publicist for people in commercial production and post-production. So people who made commercials, directors, creatives, sometimes composers, visual effects artists, editors. I was the kind of the progenitor of this, niche, such a very specific niche. And I wondered, well, why, if I'm like a ham and I like to act and I like to get up and make people laugh, why am I doing so much crowing about other people? Why am I kind of representing artists? And what I realized was that the great joy for me wasn't just being on stage, although I love it. The great joy for me was, uh, I would say, serving the people that I like and the people that I admire by capturing and conveying their voice, not in terms of mimicry, but in terms of tribute. So yeah, so over the past several years, my clients would say to me, like, oh, I need to do a press release or something. And I'm not really a publicist in the traditional sense, but I'm a press writer, so I do that. I could just the same write a yogurt, comedy campaign for television or the web as I could write the bio of the chairman of a food company, or write a press release going out from the food company, or do their internal campaigns within their own employee segments. And that all comes back to that same thing that you mentioned in the intro: sell the truth. Because the truth is, first of all, it's the foundation of comedy. So there is no comedy without truth and irony and some perspective. There isn't. You can't be a really funny comedian saying things that are completely baseless. That doesn't work. But you can take the truth, twist it around, come up with some new take on it, and deliver a more perhaps impactful and poignant version of what's really going on, a consolidated, considered version. So clients would say, oh, Hershify this bio, or Hershify my quote, Hershify, just make me sound smart. Well, it's kind of funny, all these CEOs and leaders and enigmatic figures saying, make me sound smart. And I'm like, look, if you were limited in that area, that's how you would sound. You would just sound a little better. But it wouldn't make sense for me to make you sound like Einstein. It wouldn't be, it would be incongruous. So the people who read it, the goal is for the people who read it to say, oh yeah, that sounds like him or her. That sounds like what they would say.
So it's funny. Be careful what you wish for. Hershify may actually wind up in Webster's someday. Uh,
Oh yeah,
you
I'll
never
take it.
know. But all of a sudden when you say, sell the truth, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking back to that movie with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, You Can't Handle the Truth. I'm curious what people think about when you say sell the truth, and then people is like, I can't do that. The truth is scary. The truth might bring up a bad memory, but then it's at the core of who they are and why they do. Help me to understand when somebody says, I can't sell the truth, even though the truth sells.
Okay, well, you know how when people give us advice or constructive criticism, we can take it a number of ways, right?
Uh-huh.
We can take it as a challenge, and they're threatening. It's threatening to us, and we can say, well, we don't want to be corrected, or we don't want to. But really, if someone points something out to us and
Mhm.
we recognize it as truth, and it's uncomfortable, and we didn't want to tell ourselves, which is why it hadn't occurred to us, our internal barometer will say, take that advice, be brave, take that
Mhm.
advice.
Mhm.
It's their ability to point out to us what we weren't interested in seeing. Now, if someone says the same thing to us and we go, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with that. I think you've misread the situation.
Mhm.
Then our truth is then we believe sincerely that, that we do know what the truth is. It happens to be that the other person was incorrect or misguided. So the bravery of looking at ourselves once others have already looked at us arms us with the knowledge that, well, someone has already seen it. Someone
Mhm.
has already pointed my truth out to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if they saw it, who else might see it? So if I'm
Yeah.
afraid of who I am, I may do better to confront it and pull off the band-aid and
Ouch.
get to the yeah, get to the other side, and do it with skill. See, that's the thing. Spin, the word spin, and that's again where the lines, but in my thought process, public relations, media relations, advertising, marketing, organic, earned media, bought media, it's all the same core product is being delivered across a host of delivery systems. So really, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is, what is the message? What is the core
Yeah.
message? So I think the knowledge that the truth, even in a world like today where truth seems so malleable and undefinable,
True.
um, we should seize on the things that we actually believe to be true, and embrace them and nurture them and not be afraid of them. And if they do represent something we don't like,
Mhm.
then we can change them, you know.
Yeah, I love the work that you do because while we may be starting from a place of play and our brand messaging and selling the truth, when I translate this a little bit for my listeners, we all are very talented. We are unique, whether you're a consultant or a C-suite leader or a food safety expert, and you know who you are. I know you're listening. You are all unique. You all have these unique perspectives, but then when you try to position yourself or you go for an interview or you explain what you do, we have a hard time articulating what I would say in Hersh's words, your truth. And we have to realize what our unique gifts are and how to message our value, what makes us unique, because there's 8 billion people in the world. How are you going to stand out from the rest? Again, the drop in CEO. I landed on that. I fell on my lap. It fell out of my mouth. It's a kind of a funny story,
Right.
but it's something that also it may have been a truth and I didn't own it for a while. And now once I realized, oh wow, that is different. And you, Hersh, and I might play a little bit more around that at some point to see if we can expand or even change it. There's something about that truth, and it is at the core of who I am, how I operate, and how I make a difference in the world. And I think everybody listening, whether you're a C-suite leader or still coming up in the ranks, you need to find out what your truth is and how, when you show up, you are going to communicate an amazing message.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, let's just get into brass tacks here. I want to know how you
Okay.
really help people here. So, I mean, what
Yeah.
is a leader or team feeling when they say, I got to talk to this comedian? Why do I bring a comedian into my company? And what
Yeah.
is it that you do for them? What does that process look like to finally help them find their truth?
Yeah. So for example, so first of all, I relate to the struggle of not necessarily accepting your destiny or your purpose or your moniker, because for a long time I thought I was supposed to be a comedian. I had somehow gotten distracted, and
Mm,
maybe it was fear, maybe it was just because I had a young family and I wanted to provide for them. I didn't want to take the risks of show business. Could be anything. For a long time, I blamed all these different choices. I blame myself, but you know how hard we can be on ourselves. I was hard on myself, blaming myself for not choosing my proper destiny, and I kind
Mm,
of accepted that as like a fact
mm,
that I had chosen to be in advertising and marketing and all this stuff when really I wanted to be just a performer or a writer.
mm.
And I
Yeah.
did both. And people would point out to me, you are doing both. You've written movies that have been produced, you've acted, and you've done stand up. So you're really not like denying, you're not like this tortured soul that never got to go on stage. I lived in California for 18 years. It's like I lived in New York for 10 years. I was in every comedy club. So it's like it's not like I denied it, but I had this other thing. And it was when I merged those things that it was kind of shown to me, oh, this is really your unique thing that other comedians can't really do it, and other coaches or copywriters can't do it. And that's where the answer is to your question, where I think there were certain early clients that met me in the context of being a creative, at least like a copywriter or creative director. So being a comedian wasn't that far from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Although, you don't want, when you're selling yourself for your services, you don't want them to think that you're doing it just to pay the bills and you really want to be on stage. You don't really care about their thing. But I think the forming of those relationships early on, like for example, Bear Paw footwear, boot company. So um, many years ago, like I don't know, 10 years ago, but somewhere around that time, I was working with footwear brands on grassroots marketing um, stuff, videos, earned media, a lot of earned media on the web. And then they had their agencies do their paid advertising, formal advertising. So I could do more offbeat, fun, crazy stuff. And Bearpaw was struggling with trying to define themselves in their own right, not be compared to, other brands and market leaders and so forth. What I noticed about that group was that they were very personable and that they had a real fan base among moms, among kids, soccer moms, things like that. And we developed, my team and I, content geared toward that audience instead of trying to become more exclusive or fancier or more of like this, we're going to be above everybody else. It was their accessibility served them really, really well.
Mm,
And they grew from 40 or $100 billion, several $100 billion. I don't know. I'm you know
mm.
I know that the growth was there because I was watching it as we were doing these things, and there were many, many talented people behind the scenes doing this, including the owner, Tom Romeo. And it was that relationship where eventually my being a comedian or a host or a personality was what they wanted at a given moment. But then we could sit down behind the scenes in a boardroom and have a real talk about, messaging, campaigns, everything that you would want to have in an executive, in a kind of a executive creative director or a consultant. And so my ability to wear those hats was integral. And then you become like a close confidant of your clients, where they know they can trust you. They can, everything isn't a joke, and everything isn't a time, and there's a time and a place for humor,
So
which I think I learned from my dad.
was humor part of the process because ultimately you were able to serve that client? What was their truth? Again, yes, you found a demographics that you could then message towards, but like what was their truth that through your process And how did you use humor or comedy to help draw that out and build the messaging that they wanted?
Their truth was that they had really beautiful product
Yes.
and useful and great price points and catered to the whole family.
Hmm.
You know, um, also kids grow out of shoes so fast. It's like, are you going to spend 120, 130, 40, 50 on a pair of boots for an 8-year old? You want them to have stuff that looks good, feels good, and doesn't break the bank. But at the same time, what all we did at first, and this became a thing that I do now when I'm working with clients with a lot of employees in big groups, and I'm not working just one on one with, let's say, a CEO or a founder, is I brought a film crew on a catalog shoot that they did. This was the first thing I did with them. They did a catalog shoot in Napa Valley, I think it was, and and what they were doing was really very, I didn't want to mess up their catalog shoot, but we came out and we had our own photographer and our own cameras, and we did behind the scenes interviews with the team,
Hmm.
with the marketing VP, with the owner, with the models, with the creatives, and that was funny. And those videos became like a alternate semi-reality for just a fun magazine that we created online called Bear Paw Style. And the idea was humor in that case does two things. It breaks the ice with the audience, with the consumer. It puts them more at ease. Oh, these people don't take themselves so seriously. And the other thing it does is it creates a kind of sense that, okay, there's two sides to the brand. Like a brand that has a really fun, now you see it more. Brands that, like, like Wendy's or whatever, they'll have a really funny, irreverent social media presence. But then, when you go into a Wendy's, they're not just clowning around with you. And I don't have any affiliation with Wendy's. I'm just using it as an
Hmm.
example. But you go into the restaurant and you're treated like you want to be treated as a customer, but their image creates a sense of familiarity, a sense of fun, a sense of play, and that's important to have.
What I love about that is I just kind of I'm smiling here and thinking about maybe I should be doing some behind the scenes at the Drop-In CEO. I should be interviewing my dog Reagan because he always makes some cameo appearances on my show. Or what does this beautiful studio that people see on my video really look like under the desk and behind the bookcase? There is an absolute mess down there because I'm so focused on the customer product, the perception that you see that they're going to trust me to bring great value. But behind the scenes, there's a bunch of chaos that I haven't just gotten to. I think that's really important that, yeah, we have to do our best work. We have to be organized. We have to do great presentations, be well organized for problem solving sessions. But honestly, we should let our roots show a little bit. We should let our hair down. We should allow ourselves to flub up words, which I do quite often, because honestly, that's what people connect with. And I think as leaders, when we think about our brands, and again, we don't teach this in school, that being just a little human, being a little funny, being a little playful, which I want to go into next, is really what's going to elevate you as a leader and also start building what makes you stand out as being special and different.
Very well said, Deb. Very well said. I will say that I have been developing an idea for you, um,
I can't
that
wait. We've been talking
that
about
kind
this.
of goes that kind of goes a little bit toward what you were saying, because that behind the scenes thing, I hadn't thought of it as necessarily specifically behind the scenes, but it would work. One of the things that is truly appealing about you as the drop-in CEO is your manner, your composure, and the fact that you you get the protocol so well and so clearly that you kind of do what we talked about this a little bit. You kind of have what I have on the creative side, and on the messaging side you have on the corporate side, which is that you have a great ear for their personality, right?
And
Your client's
challenges. Yes,
personality,
absolutely. Yeah.
their challenges. You
Hmm.
relate and
Hmm.
they relate to you, but they don't sense this thing like, hey, there's a new sheriff dropping in and I'm gonna you're out and I'm getting this thing and I'm doing this thing. So now, from a point of view of humor or irony, you don't want to go there with that. Like, what? But what I was thinking is, it would be funny to see what happens when you aren't composed, and when you lose your composure. And so it might be something that we could do where um, because often one of the great devices in marketing is the contrary, the opposite.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
showing the opposite. you know so so
I'm getting this.
you
I'm
could
getting this.
you could do it could be done like a little almost like a French film. We do it in black and white. We do it in a kind of what looks like an aged. You can do so many things on video now that
Hmm.
this would have been. I used to get a lot of my ideas shot down when it was more expensive to execute. They'd be like, I don't have that, thing, and I was like, we could do a documentary. We could submit it to Sundance. We could do a whole. We could shoot it on film, and they'd be like, oh my god. But now these things are much more easily accomplished. But we would do this short film, and you would play a version of yourself without the composure, without the organization. So it's kind of behind the scenes, but it's more an alternative universe where you are not so smooth and together and all that. But it could be that's to an extent what some of your clients are dealing with. They're dealing with a little disorganization. They're dealing with a little chaos and frustration. Um, but that would be the basis of it. I think ideas need time to percolate, and they need to. But they have to come from you. You see how you talked about your background behind you, literally. You talked about the mess. I need to know that stuff so that I can come up with ideas. For me to just come in and give ideas out to people without knowing them and really understanding who they are, really hearing them. It's those little tiny things that you pick up in a meeting that you'd hear the CEO say, or you'd hear the person say, or you'd see how they are relating to people, or something frustrating happens and you see how they react, and they'll be like, oh, sorry you had to see that. This has been a thing that's been going on with that. And you're like, no, this is
That's,
great. This is,
I need to
yeah,
know that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, Hersh and I are going to be doing some more one-on-one offline. You just heard some spot coaching going on in the middle of the interview here. You never know where things are actually going to go here, but there is something to be said about getting to know the person deeply. Yes, I am a professional. Yes, I show up composed. That's what people want. That's what they trust. But I will tell you, you should be shooting video when I'm in the front of my mirror. I'm trying to straighten this curly hair of mine. I'm checking my email to see what's coming through. The dog's in here looking for a walk. That's really behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden, Deb shows up. And it's like, that calming voice. She's going to take me on a journey here so that I can gain some insights. But really, to bring this here, there's a lot there. We're going to go there, but I want to just dip a little bit with the leadership stuff, humor. It's a scary place. What are some tips? What can we do, whether we bring in Hersh or not, to help us with our brand or our persona or our messaging? What could somebody do right now? Practice a tip, something that could break the ice, generate some creativity. How can we leverage a bit of humanity, a bit of humor in the workplace? And what can we achieve with that?
Okay. A lot of us enjoy comedy and we watch comedy.
Yeah.
We don't really analyze it because it isn't, unless you're a professional, you're not going to analyze certain things. You're going to just enjoy them. But as an exercise, I recommend that people watch something that they would ordinarily watch that would just be whether it's stand-up comedy or an animated program or something they watch with their kids. And they should watch something funny and analyze what about it makes them laugh. And then think about their own day and think about their own life and think about the things that are stressful to them,
Mm.
that are challenging, and then try to put those two elements together. What if I looked, can I laugh at this? Can I laugh at this? Also, another part of it is, who's to blame, right? Blame is a big thing. Now in comedy, blame is everything, right? There's some kind of conflict or some kind of incident,
Mhm.
an inciting incident, and then there's how someone reacts to it. And if a movie, let's say, were all about someone going through life having literally no problem with anything that happens, it would be a very exciting movie. But you have characters that resist the truth, and they
Mhm.
resist the reality, and they project onto other people. And we have to take a deep breath, and in this imaginary world, we're just talking about funny things that are funny to us. Start to imagine what it's like if we took responsibility for stuff. um, this is something I think we all deal with, and
Mhm.
sometimes I wonder, why do we expect our kids to know all this stuff already, when we have such a hard time owning up to our own fallibility. What do
Mhm.
we expect kids to be like? Yeah, you know what, father, I was wrong in that situation. That was immature of me. And we respond, well, you're 5 years old, you'll get over it. But um, but we really have to play that game with ourselves a little bit. And then, um, going back to the honesty thing, I don't think the honesty thing for me is based on principle, in the sense that, you know I demand honesty, or this kind of thing. It comes from the fact that I'm trying to get to the joke, or to the resolution. And honesty is just the fastest way to get to the other side. And so when thinking about ourselves, if we were doing a self evaluation, but put in the irony there that you saw in that show that you liked, or whatever it was, you'd start to be able to laugh at yourself. You if you tell an underling to laugh at you, or go ahead, make a joke at my expense, it's not going to work. They're not going to make a joke at your expense, and it might not be the right process. But if you don't take yourself so seriously, and what is it required to not take yourself seriously? Confidence, really.
Mhm.
Loving yourself,
Mhm.
really. The more you love yourself, the more impervious you are to haters. Like, does anybody really feel like they can be in a position of power and
Yeah.
never have any haters? I just interviewed someone about tall poppy syndrome, where people will start it in ancient Greece, where uh, the tall poppies would grow, and they would uh, overshadow the small poppies. And the idea was, cut the tops off,
Mhm.
and then everybody will be the same size, and no one will be above anyone else. But in fact, it's the people who crave the power that are trying to cut down all the other poppies.
Mhm.
And I think that we have a tendency as human beings to be envious. Sometimes it spurs us on to be better people and accomplish more, and sometimes it makes us very petty and nefarious in our way we deal with it. So the idea is, build your confidence, look for great role models. Even if you're a great role model yourself, there probably are great role models in other areas,
Mhm.
or colleagues that you find yourself being a bit envious of, but you really just want to be able to do what they're doing. Most of the time, I think we'll find that those people that we're looking at are a good model for us. We're not we all know who isn't a good. We all know when we see people that we don't respect or admire. I don't think we're going to be threatened by them.
Mhm.
I think we're going to be more threatened by people that we do admire.
You know,
So
when I think about the work that you do, helping people to sell the truth, something I shy away with because maybe my default mechanism is to be so in control. But I will tell you, and these are the behind the scenes. My husband and I are originally from New Jersey, and people from New Jersey will actually kind of blow their top a little bit more and tell you exactly what they think. And we can be labeled as gruff. I try to shy away from that because I don't like conflict, but I will tell you if I don't face the truth and tell my husband exactly what I think and what really upset me in the vulgarity that I'm not going to use right now on the air, I'll tell you, first of all, it immediately makes him laugh when I blow up at him. And then I'm saying, he once asked me, "How do you feel now?" I said, "I feel wonderful. I got that off my chest." Or sometimes when faced with something, we're tired, we're exhausted. It's funny what just happened. I had a horror story with traveling from A to B. We'll just like start laughing hysterically. Yes, it was a misfortune, it was inconvenient, but at the end of the day, I will say there's something edgy about laughter and also about blowing up, that while sometimes there's almost too much emotional intelligence, we have to manage our feelings and how it's going to impact people. And I know that's really important so that everybody feels safe. However, occasionally blowing up, saying the truth, saying something funny is important to get it out there, get the truth, and maybe get to a better understanding of what you're supposed to be or how we're supposed to interact with the world. I so appreciate going a little bit with our emotions and letting things like laughter or just being real. It's important for us to move forward in what we're doing.
it
You and I
sure
could go
is.
on and on, but I would just love if give you the stage a last few moments to bring this to a close, because I want people to check out a little bit more about your podcast, Yes Brand, the work that you do to help people message what they're supposed to in the world, and maybe some of your comedy as well. I mean, I've been thoroughly enjoying that, but any last things that you want to share?
Thank you, Dev. This has been so much fun for me. It's great to in order to play, you have to have playmates. You can't just play by yourself all the time in your room. And even when I was little and I would put on dress up and do things in front of the mirror, the greatest joy was to be on a stage and do it. And I think that even though I come across a lot of my clients are not people who would readily get on the stage, I made a decision a while ago not to make that, like, I'm not trying to turn them into a comedian, or, I don't want to teach public speaking, or I don't really want to teach any of that. I just want to share with them and grow with them. And I honestly believe that before you can brand yourself honestly, you have to kind of find yourself. And some people have, and they just don't know how to express it or what's appropriate to express. And so I would just share that with Yes Brand, and the idea, as I alluded to, was, in improv, uh, we always say yes and it's a rule. So if someone says something outrageous, like the Martians have landed, we don't say no, they haven't, and try to come up with something else. We have to work with what we're given. So we say yes, and they're all wearing Prada suits and smoking cigars, because it gives the other person something to work with. So it's an exchange, it's a back and forth. And that's at the core of what I do with brands, because a brand isn't just a person, but most of the brands I work with are in the middle somewhere. They're not necessarily the market leader. They wouldn't necessarily need to work with me if they are, but they are challenger brands in many cases. They're trying to get to another level. They're trying to get either to another level of understanding, or another level of revenue, or another level of growth. I do have clients that have come from other countries and wanted to break into the U.S. market and know how do we translate our message, So the needs can run the gamut, but this kind of back and forth
Mm.
works only if there's a willingness to go back and forth. So I won't have a client who says, all right, go do that, go do the thing that you do, and then I don't talk to them. Or I talk to
Mhm.
people so far down the line that there's so many levels of bureaucracy that they can't, if it's not, and this, if it,
Mhm.
from your work and from your podcast, if it's not actionable, what's the point? If they can't actually take it and do it,
I mean,
I
inspiration
hate
is
the
one
wheel
thing, but you
spinning.
got to be able to move forward with something that is
Yeah.
practical ultimately.
Yeah. And we know that I've heard that from people that I've gone to for counsel. If you're not ready to do it, if you're not ready to go and start this new chapter, if you're not ready to go out and put all the hours, it's not going to work. And that's the true of anything. My dad always said, if you're going to do something, do it right. That
Absolutely.
was that was like really something I have thought of every day. Like it gives you that inspiration to put that little extra effort in. And I think with messaging, the audience will see the effort. The audience will see and respect the effort.
Hersh, you have been an amazing guest. I really appreciate that. I appreciate playing with you. And I will tell you, you have been inspiring me to think a little bit different. Again, I feel good about what I do as a leader as I show up, but you even have inspired me to maybe even evolve and take this in a slightly different direction. So you've been an amazing guest. I want people to check out your podcast, Yes Brand, also the Truth Tastes Funny podcast, and also all your work, because you never know, by selling the truth, you may have an absolutely amazing brand or an amazing message to help your career. So, Hersh, thank you for being an amazing guest.
Oh, thank you so much, Deb. I really, really enjoy speaking with you, and I'm so glad to be developing this relationship, both in terms of being on one another's shows, which has been so much fun for both of us, and just talking about our work. It's fun to talk about it with people who, you relate to so well.
We need more fun in the world. Thank you again, Hersh.
Yes.